Давайте 2 минуточки еще ждем, пока все просыпаются, подходят.
Good morning, distinguished participants. I think that we have we need some extra time to wait because there are some people are in the hall in the reception and they are still on their way. So let's wait a little bit and then we will start our work. So I would like to congratulate you on this successful participation in the competition because everybody who I saw yesterday, so they stayed until the very last minute with their essays, and those who made the oral presentations, they also spoke to the members of jury and did a brilliant job. I will just remind you that Roman mentioned yesterday that the prize winners and the finalists will be, calculated, will be identified by the total of their points. So you can go back to online materials and check check your presentations online. So, and I checked it yesterday, and it was really wonderful, and I found many interesting speeches and presentations. So you can get back there and check what the people were doing. So now we are moving to this kind of cultural program. So we are going to listen to 6 extraordinary presentations. In Stud House, you will meet a very exotic character. So you will meet a person who was born in Kaliningrad, and he will tell you how he was born in Kaliningrad. And and then he will tell you about his future life, about his life today. And so that will be a very interesting talk. And then so you will also have a trip to Chernihovsk, to some places which are connected to Kant's legacy. And then tomorrow you will go to the to the Institute of Living Systems, and you will also see the Wallenrod Library, and that's an amazing place which keeps the spirit of university, and university, it's a university treasure. And then the first speaker today is our rector, the rector of Kaliningrad of Baltic State University, Federal University, and so that is Alexander Fedorov, and he will speak on the future. He will speak on the connection between the present time and the future. Thank you so much, distinguished colleagues, and everybody is impressed with your last night performance. And so that means that you will certainly have all the good luck, not only here in Kaliningrad, but in the future as well. And we are going to start with some simple things. But my presentation is going to be pretty long because the topic is a comprehensive one, and I will try to proceed very quickly. But I will make some introductory remarks following what I mentioned yesterday in our plenary session. Now you have got a unique chance, and believe me, you won't have many unique chances in life. So please make a good use of those. But you are in a different context, in an unknown for you environment, and that's a very special venue. So it's the birthplace of Immanuel Kant, Goffman, Canarin. And that's a unique place, unique region. Believe me, that's an exclave, and it's it is the region that became the part of the Soviet Union after the Second World War. And it's a very complex community, and that's an island. And we have got some signs of island mentality, and at the same time we are included in this European mentality because until recently the borders were open, and 1/3 of the region spend their weekends in Lithuania and Poland, like every week. And so that added the uniqueness to the region because it's a real frontier. Russian frontier in the west, and you even now you can feel it. And it has a unique nature, unique landscapes, unique nature. So, and the Curonian Spit is a very special place. And of course, one visit is not enough. It's not the one visit location. And so every time you go there, you absorb this uniqueness and this its special feeling. And it's rather easy to overlook, but it takes time to understand and feel. So you have to develop your point of view. Heidegger has got such an opinion when he says the point of view makes up or develops the value. And he goes on quoting Leibniz, and he says that the point of view is not just a point of view, but it is a point in view. And let us conduct a metaphysical experiment. So we have got the chance for this. When we want to identify what when we want to identify something new in this multi-level world, we find ourselves at some dead end. Look at yourself and try to conduct a diachronic experiment. Try to consecutively exclude some things in order of their appearance in this reality. And what are we going to start with? With the telephone? Yeah, probably with this. Yeah, we can apply a complex type of negation and the fallout of the of the substance, or just we can wind it back. Yeah. So first it's going to be the simpler phone, then the button phone, then it goes to the camera, and then it goes to some CD player or MP3 player, and then it turns into some simple log. Yeah, so probably you remember the science fiction writer Philip Dick, and he has got a novel, Ubik, which is called Ubik. And he played a metaphysical game, and one of his characters asked, what do you have to do to make a radio player turn into the television set in the reality, in Aristotle reality? And the answer is very simple. You have to give it a shape of a television set. And then we will go on with our metaphysical experiment, and then probably the laptop will disappear, and just look around yourself and try to catch the sequence, how the things are going to disappear from your reality. The question is, what appears first, and what is new, what is genuinely new? The genuine novelty could be rather difficult. So Saint Augustine in the 4th century AD was contemplating that the things appear in the order of their complexity. So everything that is produced first, so that is the novelty, that is the innovation. But then when they multiplied, when they become produced by the conveyor belt kind of assembly line, so they become just the copies. It's the same how a woman gives birth to a child. That's Genesis, and then the creation. Yeah, that's the appearance of or emergence of something new from nothing. It's a much a more complex entity. And so you can experiment sitting in your hotel room in front of the fireplace. So you can contemplate of what you can get in the same room after some time. And after some time, you will get the idea that the human or, a person who created this first time was the real creator. So, but then when we think about some technical novelty, we think about the sequence of technological solutions, and it becomes more and more complex, more and more difficult. Then you might recall when Steve Jobs presented his second iPhone, and he gave a story how the novelty is created. And emergency or emerging effect, when everything comes together, when everything comes in place, creates something new. All the aspects of design, technological solutions were brought together, and that produced something new. Well, what we know about novelty is the limit of future. And this limit of future is shaped by us today, every day. According to our type, according to our creation, and according to our cognitive types. Somebody is an innovative type, somebody is a preserving type. So there are 4 types of cognitive personalities, and we will mention them later. So when we speak about future, we have got a dashboard, out of which, the same as the menu in restaurant, we can choose whatever dish we want. Well, it can be technology and robotics. It could be economics. It could be new ethics. It could be new policy. So whatever is relevant when we move from globalism to universalism and then universality of this world. Whatever you want. The menu is quite long, and you can take whatever you want. And just then you can fantasize about it, and it's unlimited. Heidegger, in 1956, mentioned the maxim. So that was a maxim that just to make the question sound well, you have to put it well. So let's try to put the question well. Let's try to put it correctly. The same way as Kant once mentioned apparetics. Apparetics is the science or the art of putting the questions right. And it is mentioned to the introduction, to the preface, to the critics of a pure mind. So 5 questions. You will think about 5. We are going to think about 5 questions. So you will think. You will take some time thinking. Probably you can come up with your own questions. Probably you think that just it's not enough, and you can come up with some other ideas. So, but we will think about these questions. I will give you my answers, and then you will think about them. And it's going to be another metaphysical experiment, and you will try your own answers to the questions which I will show you. Probably you will find something new, something that we overlook now. Probably you will develop your own point of view and your own point in view. So 5 questions. What does the future start with? So I've got some confusion with my laptop, it's rather bad to push buttons in 2 different devices, 2 different gadgets. So that is apparetics. So, and 5 questions. Probably they sound a little bit unusual. Probably they make you think about the whole situation from a different angle. And our task is to change the angle of vision, to change our point of view, to represent this rather strange object, which is the future. So have a look, take a look at my answers. So where does from what does the future start? It starts from the thought of it. Why does it exist? It exists because we produce it. When will it start? Never, because there is nothing future, because nothing apart from future exists. And let's start with the last one. So what will it finish with? So we will speak about the means or the tools to eradicate the future, how to eradicate the future, how to stop the future. The first thing, you have got a picture of a temple of Angkor Wat. That is in Cambodia. Have you ever been there? Raise your hand if you have been there. please do go there because it's a very special place, 120 kilometers from Thai border, and the name of the city is Simri, and that's a huge temple facility, and so its total area is more than 200 hectares in a wild forest. But so the Sorbona from Paris, Sorbona's expedition is permanently there. So they have been conducting archaeological excavations, but excavations are prohibited. But they have found rather specific things, and that's the so this place is the the background, or just that's the base of the foundation of Khmer civilization, and 9-12 centuries were the heyday of this place, and they they used to have a perfect service system, wonderful economy, and the town was developing and getting richer and richer. The country had very good international policy, not only attacking policy, but they were very good in defense. The main art that this civilization developed was architecture, and even what you can see now, what you can see in the ruins today, produces huge impression, produces unforgettable impression. That's a huge library, and that's a temple, bastion temple, or the fortress temple, and and it's kind of a library that contains the book which illustrates different stages in civilization development. But everything stopped in the 12th century. Well, why? Did anything change? No. You wouldn't find a single sound explanation of what happened to this place. But over the period of 3 years, about 800,000 people left the city and resettled, relocated, as we say today, to some different places. Did they have any wars? No. Did they have any hunger and starvation? No. Did climate change? No. But at some point, the civilization found out that they could not produce a future any longer. And since the 12th century, this place had not been restored. Berzung, that's Nietzsche's term, that's oblivion and decay. So why did civilization stop being there? Why did it cease living there? So it's because there is no future. If you cannot produce future any longer, you leave the place and you go to some other place. You leave the place where your metaphysical powers cannot produce anything any longer. Then the second project, or the second type, that's project collapse. So that's the book, the papers of the 22nd.
Страна принимает программу коммунистической партии.
22nd Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So the country gets together for this Congress, and according to the plans which were developed by the Communist Party, by 1980, the country should have built communism in the country. And the papers that you can see here, that's the moral code of the communist builder, of the builder of the communism. So what is that? That's the system of values which turned into the ideological system, and that is the ideological code for the people who were to build communism. And by 1980, the communism should have been created, should have been built. So what is that? What is the communism? How did they understand the communism? Everybody has got an apartment. Everybody has got job. Everybody has got some decent salary. And, so actually some of the parameters were included into these kind of codes for the other countries. So whether it is the United States or Sweden. So, but unfortunately, not every country could, could develop, or just not every country could work it out the same way as the Soviet Union was dreaming to do. So in Sweden, they conducted some experiment like several years ago. So they conducted a referendum on a special solution. So they wanted to give each month every person, every citizen of Sweden, 3,000 euros to their bank account. So so they were holding a referendum whether it is necessary to be done. So, but people voted against it because that steals the meaning of your life. Are you going to work if you have 3,000 euros? So every month, probably no. That steals the meaning of your life. And then, so there was. Well, actually, the Soviet Union also collapsed because the calculations of the process, calculations of the development were wrong. They were originally wrong. So they developed the image of the future, but unfortunately, the calculations were faulty. So the program is rather good. The program reads as some kind of scientific novel, good scientific novel. So the program was perfect. But unfortunately, the implementation was rather bad. Just the reasoning was rather feeble. So, unfortunately, it was a really very good one. But the people who implemented it did not do their job well. So probably, if there were some other performances, some other executors who could do it, probably that would be better. Probably that's it's about people, it's about logistics, or it's about something. If Elon Musk got hold of such a project, probably he can make it work. But unfortunately, in the Soviet Union, the collapse of the Soviet Union marked marks the impossibility of such project. So it means that when you are to launch such a project, such a comprehensive project, it means your huge responsibility. So the responsibility to develop the future.
The third type, Greta Thunberg is a great person. You remember this girl who in 2019 at the UN summit made the speech, putting blame on the adults So in her point of view, there are two kinds of people, adults and children. She blamed the adults that they are lying, that they have wasted the resources of this world. They are interested only in gain and everything which concerns the climatic agenda. She named it a lie. She showed one important thing, which in the history of humankind happened not quite often, but still happened. When the younger generation stops understanding the values of the older generation and does not find any capacities for reproduction. For adults, childhood is a disease which should become over. For a child or a new generation to inherit something from the older generation, and it should continue. When children say that we don't understand your values, we don't share your values, and the most important that we have our own ones, the adults are always puzzled in this situation because a priori it is believed that children are only a starting point for formation of humankind, that children could be lied to in order to protect them, for example, that children lie themselves, that children do not possess that level of intellectual capacities which when they can be taken seriously. Now, let's take this vice versa. We can say all these things about the adults. Adults lie. Adults are prone to absolutely violent actions. The adults start wars, catastrophes. Children do not do that. And in the viewpoint of children, there is no point in trusting adults. When adults say that we will leave this world for you, then then a question rises: if the adults leave this world to children in a good condition, and what will these children do? They will do absolutely the same as their parents did. And here we have a paradox, and where it's very difficult to take the situation of novelty from this situation. If the civilization stops producing something new, then history stops. It happened in ancient Egypt. At some point, the civilization stopped producing novelty. It fixed on traditions, and it believed that it would exist the eternity very long, but it stopped with civilization collapse. The worst was with the Khmers, because they just left as they understood that there would be no future. That's quite interesting, in fact. A New York journalist, David Wells, wrote a book in 2019, Uninhabited Land, The World After the Civilization. That's a very interesting book. I would advise you should read it. It's written there that in 50 years this world will not exist. This book is not a story of a journalist. That's quite an interesting system with some evidence and some proof. And it says that the limit of energetic collapse and environmental collapse has been reached. It's the same thing as Greta Thunberg mentions. The unreversible changes which adults started in this world have led us to resulted in a crisis. The only thing which could be done from the point of view of Greta is to put adults aside from governing this world. Wallace tries to find an answer from this for this situation. He says that our generation is responsible for this. The generation of those who are 40, 50, it's only us who can save this world. And then he puts the question, who are we? And the question remains there. Those who made this catastrophe, or there should be some other generations who would change the situation. There is no answer in this book. This book tells us very good that in the coming 50 years, the climatic structure which we have now will not be there, and the limit of civilization collapse is very near. The fourth form.
Две книжки, книжка и аниме.
A book and anime, Haruki Murakami. Raise your hands if you've read it. So, if you haven't, then just look at this book. That's quite great Japanese writer. Here we have the first volume of this, and it's called.
Ой, да, прошу прощения. Да что ж такое? Мне надо. Там на самом деле один слайд нужен, да.
And it's called The Murder of Commander.
Соответственно, посмотрите, вот в чем суть этой.
So, what's the idea here? The Murder of a Commander, that's a big novel. This is a mystical realism style. It tells about a young painter who leaves his wife, who is in depression, and his friend leaves him the keys from a lodge in the mountains, and he stays there for a month about. And when he enters this house, dozens and hundreds wonderful events began happening. He survives through a billion of different things which sometimes puzzle him, sometimes make him rush in his life, sometimes make him idle. So that's unbelievable number of events. And in the end of the second volume, he returns to his wife, and in a month, he can hardly recall what happened to him. The starting and the final point. So he enters the circle of events, and then he gets out of this circle. Absolutely the same person who has survived a lot of things, but he didn't change at all because he had this intention to return to his wife. So he made something which Nietzsche calls return to the beginning. So he went through this cycle, survived different things, but he remained the same person. Melancholy of Haruki Suzume in Asia. So
5-7 назад
about 10 or 5 years ago, that was one of the most popular titles, A Girl Who Can Rule the Time and Reality. And there's a wonderful series, there are 6 series, and all these episodes are repeated. And besides some minor details, the event happens one day before New Year holiday. So, and there is a leader of a group of school children, gathers these children together, makes them do something, something happens, and this girl decided to stop the time. So on the 31st of August, in order to prevent the beginning of the 1st of September, and she made the time to go in cycles for 467 years. So the same week was repeating. The world got into recurse. Why she did that, we could find out only in the end. Because the boy whom she loved didn't do his homework for the 1st of September. So that's why she gave him a chance for 467 years to change the situation, so, even though he failed to do that. So, and then
самый яркий пример
the most vivid example of multi-recursive future, which is at the same time destruction of a factory for production, the future, and at the same time the way of production, the future, is China. We will get to that story
10 минут.
in 10 minutes. So the idea is that the Chinese civilization, so if you follow the events, what are going there in China, and you know what the 20th Congress of the China Communist Party, so the tasks which are put there and the semantics, how it was expressed, so the main tasks for the country's development. So if you know that, you can understand what I mean here. China bases the program for its development on the theses which were formed in the 3rd century AD. And China repeats the tasks and the actions which 3 leaders or emperors of the state made. And it was the core for the development of civilization. For the first time in the Zen epoch, and this is 221st BC, established China as a continental empire. And since that time, they never got aside from 2 things. First of all, this is dynastic curse, which was said by Mao Zedong, who tried to do his cultural evolution, almost killing the country. So, and there were dynasty cycles. This is the rise of civilization and decay of the civilization. So they follow each after another. So there is a wonderful 12-volume work which was made by the Russian Academy of Science. So you can read this. It's very difficult, but you can read this and you will find some proof for that idea. So this civilization produces and destroys the future at the same time in the process of multi-recursion. There is only one basis and one semantics within which they formulate their tasks for development. For China, everything which is beyond China is not the object of impact, of influence. If something gets within China, then it is China. So China doesn't have the task of expansion.
Шар, да, который
So expansion of a ball That's not expansion in their understanding. Unlike Alexander the Great army, which conquered half of the world, China does not go into expansion. So they expand just within themselves. Let's move on. Michel Onfray, French philosopher, writer.
А что ж такое-то? Прошу прощения, коллеги. Мишель Онфре
Michel Onfray wrote a book, Anti-History of Philosophy.
переведен
It is translated into English. So if you have time, read this book. That's quite interesting. In his book, Cosmos,
рассуждая
he says, speaking about the future, when you think about the future, never forget that the day after tomorrow will be yesterday.
когда мы говорим о будущем,
When we are talking about the future, and we say that we will be able to present something, we write a science fiction novel or do something else, we think about ourselves and about the intentions which we have. The future, it's impossible to represent the future. These are objects which are at the same time here and not here. Besides the future, there is nothing in this world. All the things, the present, the past, are modices of it. You may not have breakfast today, but you will survive till tomorrow. But if you will not eat another day, you will die.
системы модусов,
So we live our resources which are within the system of modices,
которому
and due to which the humankind exists. And that's for production of future. The future does not exist by itself. It's not so. That's an illusion. The future is a cooperative, convergent process of joint actions of different people in order not to produce it, but just to preserve it and to cherish it, like we do that with a baby. Like we cherish a baby for it to grow up. That's the same about the future. It's not enough to build something. We should strive for keeping it, for preserving it, for it to have future. There are two terms, appresentation and pre-presentation. Appresentation is understood very simply. Picasso's book, big picture,
мы
what the artist did here. We can see a violin from different sides, including those sides which are not available for us. This is appresentation. On the right, you can see a famous painter, Francis Bacon.
если не знакомы с ним, познакомьтесь, почитайте.
If you don't know him, read Gilles Deleuze's work about him. That's a great work.
Сидящая фигура, что мы
So the sitting person, we can see a person here who is at the same time in different moduses of his time. It looks like he is being born at the same time, he is dying, and he is living at the same time. So all the moments of his existence are combined here. This is pre-representation. Think about that. Let's move on.
не существует одного будущего,
There is no single future.
единственно верного,
There is no one correct future, and there is no one way to produce future. If somebody thinks this way, it means that they try to convince themselves that the world is simple and understandable. By the 20th of the 20th century, there were 5 types of producing the future, 5 generations, which I will mention here. So they appeared one after another, but the gap between the 4th and the 5th was huge, and we will see this huge gap now. And this gap manifests itself in the system of physical, machine engineering, and so it exhausts the resource that the humankind mankind has accumulated for 5,000 years, and now, and the aim of the resource was to facilitate the future. But the main thing is that not a single generation died out in the course of its existence. So, and just think about it, humanity is the huge metaphysical factory, huge metaphysical facility. You can imagine a house which is inhabited by 5 different generations, like great-grandparents, grandparents, then parents, then the first floor is given to children and to grandchildren. So the paradox of it is that each generation reproduces itself. The great-grandfathers produce great-grandfathers, grandfathers produce grandfathers, and children, that's a great question. What can children produce? If they produce children, they want to push them somewhere in the attic so that they could sit in a quiet place and were not visible and quiet. So, but when the children start roaming around the city, the house, so they produce some fights because they fight with all the other generations to occupy some rooms, to occupy some more spaces, and so on. Because the ordered existence is when the generations do not meet each other and they do not fight over the space. But as soon as children start roaming the space, so that becomes the chaos dominates. So let's have a look at the generations. That's what let's look what generation means. So that's a very long definition. I wouldn't comment on it because it's long and complicated. So just think about it. But just when we come to the end of my presentation, we will try to define it a little bit better. So the idea of philosophic reflection is that any philosopher is focused on making the situation more complex and more sophisticated and produce a extended terminological apparatus to describe the situation. But when the philosopher becomes a good one, so he tries to simplify life and he tries to simplify everything. So I would recommend you an Indian movie which is called Three Idiots. It's a really good one. So it lasts about 2 hours, but so it's something worthy. And so that's about the people who are looking for themselves in the context of a very traditional society. So when the boy is to become an engineer and the girl is to become a doctor. So you will find a boy who comes to the lecture in the university and he finds the very boring professor who makes him give the definition to a machine. And when the boy gives the definition to a machine, so he is told off by the professor and he is thrown out of the classroom. Why? Because he actually didn't quote the traditional definition that was given by the professor. But the boy gave his definition. He said that machine is a mechanism which makes the life of people easier. And that was the essence, that was the core. And you don't even have to add any other details because you simply complicate it. And that's the core definition, which means everything. And what is the future? The future is the mechanism that helps people to produce future. So the generations of the future also have got their own characteristics. So you will, you can enlarge them, you can extend them, but yourself after the lecture. So the mass of the population or the kind of the volume of the population, which is characterized by some heavy events like wars, terrorist organizations, or space exploration, and so on. So that produces the mass of the population of the generation of the future. Then scale, that is that can be referred to as
времени
like the total space or total space of its distribution within some time frame. Yeah, so just you take some time frame and you think about the scale of its expansion. Somebody calculates the future within 100-year time frame. Somebody thinks about 1,000 years. Somebody thinks about 10,000 or dozens of thousands of years, like, well, the Buddhism. Then length of future. So that's the volume of metaphysical time within which a certain design configuration is implemented. And there are several designs, and they are pretty simple. These packages of future are quite simple, like utopia, dystopia, protopia, and atopia. So you can think of something different, but if you come up with some other idea that will comply with one of those. Well, what is protopia? So the term was introduced by Klaus Schwab, and he is the director of Davos Economic Forum. And in a number of his publications, just like the fourth industrial revolution, he defined protopia is the process when every 10 years a slow and well, predictable improvement takes place. So we we see our life improved every 10 days. We see that our telephones have become better, our medicine has become better, and the living conditions have become better. So protopia is a very is a wonderful space, but probably not reachable within our our life. Then cohesion. Cohesion is the kind of length or is a succession of all the positive processes. So if the society populated with the innovative type of people, so it will end up in the revolution. If the population or if the society is populated with the keepers, then the society faces the point when it stops existing. And then fear. Every generation has got its its fear. And there is some limit where the generation of the future is afraid to look at. So there is some kind of limit of fear, and you cannot look beyond this limit. So the first future generation, that's demiurge generation. So that is the Gnostic demiurge. And two examples. The ancient Egypt in its splendor of 2,000-year existence, from the ancient to the middle and to the new, and the Great Wall of China. Two huge metaphysical machines. So two metaphysical machines fixed in time and space, around which two great civilizations arose. These machines are not, they are fixed in space. They are fixed in place. They cannot be moved. They cannot be shifted. They are fixed in space and time. They are constant, and this content grows some civilization or civilization design around themselves. So, and what is the fear? The fear of intervention and the fear of some new traditions being introduced into their life. Yeah, so they're imminent, they are auto-imminent. And so they are self-sufficient, and they don't need anything from the outside. Ancient Egyptian civilization is a very special thing, and when we go to Egypt and we come to the pyramids, or we go to Abydos, or we sail down the Nile, we understand that we are looking at ruins. By the way, who who wrote the first guidebook on the civilization which disappeared? That was Pafsani, who wrote the description of Ellada. So that was actually the first guidebook produced by the civilization. That was the first guidebook on disappeared future or disappeared civilization. Let's imagine that we are to write the guidebook on the disappearing future. So Pafsani wrote the guidebook on the ancient Greece. So, and the same thoughts come to us when we are standing at the Great Pyramids. When we are looking at the ruins, we can think about our future, or we can think about the civilization. But the civilization that existed there had built what it wanted to build. So just they built the civilization, or they built their future, but where are the people? Where is the population? But the idea of the population was to just to go to the to the supreme world, to go to the just to the Atep, so which is the afterlife. So that was the perfect implementation of their life plan. So where is the civilization? So the civilization went to the afterlife, and so that was very well exemplified by ancient Egypt.
That's a shot from a movie that's a short series about the history
Очень крутого.
of a very cool programmer, IT expert who built a quantum computer. A quantum computer was built only for one purpose, in order to resurrect her dead daughter, who died when she was 10, and he put it a task with the help of quantum computer to change the reality and to build a machine which would govern the time and which will form absolutely similar digital reality, where he could be God and he could resurrect his dead daughter. The thing which we know and which we can see in this world, the embodiment of this generation of the future, it is this. This is Great Hadron Collider, which is one of the greatest embodiments of how humankind forms the machine civilization. This is a research device which does not produce products, consumer products, which does not produce anything which anybody would need, except for 300 physicists who are there. That's it. So this is the device for production of the future, which probably will be formed in this design in 50 or in 100 or in 1,000 years. And this story started not with a quantum computer, but with the chemical machines invented by Paracelsus in the 15th century. Wonderful and uncomparable story of appearance of philosophy in the ancient world, when a group of men who had nothing to do because economic situation was based on the slave labor and Athenians had all the opportunities for developing the main resource which a philosopher needs. Which one? The time. Because if you don't feed the metaphysical machine with this fuel, you will have nothing. So consuming time and its management is the basis for establishing, for production of philosophical product. And probably it's even more appropriate for this. So when people start working in a steel factory, starts at 6 in the morning and finishes at 4 in the afternoon. So the work of a philosopher has no beginning and no ending, because you can't stop thinking. Of course, it is possible to drink a bottle of wine and then to turn to some other thing, but that's not a method. So in any case, you will start thinking about something else. So don't experiment with alcohol. So you need time for that, and the main fuel and the main value for that is the time. For production of the future, we need giant temporal layers which have to come at certain time and it's in certain shop and be used in the correct way. The third generation of the future, Titanic generation, the most beautiful and the most terrible machines of that future are nuclear carriers and nuclear submarines. Before the 20th century, humankind never produced anything like that at that scale and that energy-consuming machines. These machines can destroy the world within a very limited period. And when we first realized the global character of the world, that was in 1961. And at the 22nd Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, the General Secretary, Nikita Khrushchev, at the very last day of the Congress, said that the Soviet Union tested the biggest thermonuclear bomb in the history of nuclear construction. That was 50 kilotons, and the explosion wave, went around the world for 3 times. Originally, it was planned 100 kilotons. I believe if there was testing of a 100 kiloton bomb, we would feel it nowadays. So at that time, the world became global because we realized that we can destroy the world at a time and very quickly. It didn't become universal because we had 2 poles who had 2 general metaphysical ideas. One idea was communism. The second idea was freedom. That's very precise. That's a very short and not correct embodiment of what the North American civilization is based on. So ideas of communism and freedom as universal ideas did not let the world become unified. So, and in the end of the 20th century, it became disappearing. And nowadays, we are surviving the period of extension, so to say. The humankind could not stand on one way. If you have some time, this is the main physical resource. Look, American Richard Rorty, 1976. He wrote an article called Philosophy and the Future, and he said there, for the first time in the history of philosophy, philosophers stopped thinking about eternity and became thinking about future. And when they started thinking about future, they quite quickly one idea sprang up: cosmopolitan democratic state. And he said that this is the limit of the civilization development, and it will be achieved very soon. So in order to enter this, you have to forget about some national aesthetics, ethics, and the design of the future. So that's quite interesting thing. I once happened to be in the governmental delegation in Singapore in 2015. And the leader of our delegation suggested that I should see Hotel Marina Bay. That's a wonderful building. So if you happen to be in Singapore, visit this place because it's unforgettable. This is one of the achievements of humankind. And at the at the top floor, there is a museum of future. So, but if you want to see real design of future, which nowadays exists in the historic time, then visit Dubai. Last September,
По своей форме музей будущего.
a shocking museum of future was opened there. So, and if you put this as a... So, first go to Cambodia, then to Egypt, and then to Dubai.
И мы зашли с ним в этот...
So, when we visited this hotel, which was quite impressive, and we came to the fencing on the 30th floor, and he showed me the system of cooling or air conditioning in the system. So there is a pond with crystal water, and there is a cooling device which works without any noise, cools this giant complex and accumulates the final product, and it changes. So, and there are logistics solutions applied absolutely, which are not connected with the environment of this lake. So it is filled with potable water. And he said that this is true engineering. The future is created here. I said, so what? But we in Russia or in Americans have nuclear submarines. And he said, no, these are different things. And then I thought about this. I realized that these are two different engineering stories. The Titanic generation of the future always produces a product which is expressionist. The main fear is that there is limit and they cannot move forward. This generation of the future began establishing quite long ago. Remember Alexander the Great and his army. He could not stop until the machine stopped working. And when it happened, Alexander died. When he tried to become a king, and when Egypt and under Ptolemaios became appearing, everything stopped for the Alexander Empire. So this is the same Titanic generation of the future. That's why nowadays Russia, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, both Russia and the United States have a problem with formation of the global world. Because before, in Russia and in the United States nowadays, they are getting... They are losing this generation of machines. So they are lagging behind. There is no material for this. So for the efficiency of these machines would work for the global civilization.
The next future generation of the future, that's the hotel. So it is amazing. At the top you can see a ship, gondola, a ship which locates a park, a swimming pool. You can live there. There is a museum of the future, and it's a wonderful place. Has anybody been there? Just make it a task. It's a must. And then, away from this lake or pond, you can see the Singing Tree Park. So there are trees, artificial trees, which are shining, shimmering, and they can sing. Intimis civilization, Intimis future generation of the future, set a different task, a radically different task from what we have been discussing in the Titanic generation of the future. The fear is is the veil which has been taken out. So the fear is in solved mystery. So this generation of the future is based on absolutely different tasks than those which we have described before. Tesla. You can see the picture of Tesla, developed by Elon Musk. And it's not a car. And it's not an environmental solution. It's a partner. It's a partner, a friend, somebody who helps you to live, who guides you to live. And so he also has to tell you where to go. And 100% probability predicts how your day will develop. It's not the hotel, it's not something that rises above the time and space, but it's something that creates a very comfortable way of life. So this thing, which is the toilet, in Japanese and Korean design, was produced or has been produced since 1970s. And the task, well, just what was the task set for Korea? Our task is to get rid of toilet paper. That's what they said when they started producing this toilet. So if you don't know this toilet, so the first contact will be very surprising, because so it sinks, it opens the lid, depending on your gender. So it washes you, and it is very friendly, and it provides a very imminent impression, very imminent feeling. So, and that's the Intimis solution. Tesla will start produce Optimus in 2023. Musk showed the prototype, and I don't know what you think about this prototype, but I don't like it. So, and it is something that will intrude on the most protected space. That's your private space, your your very private, intimate space. It is something that will live together with you. It will do everything for you. It will spend all its time with you, and it will do your housework, and it will share your intimate space. So this generation of the future was created long ago, and in a place Dalmut, between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, there was a place where people exercised the cult of water, and it was 3,000 years ago. And the cult of fresh water, or the drinking water, was the cult of this population. The people of that space produced vessels, water vessels, and they were made of fine glass. And so they worshipped it because probably water was in a deficit, and that was the cult of it, and that was the intimis generation. The last generation of the future is the transcreation or transversal generation, and we will examine this picture, and you will understand what I'm talking about. It's March 2022 in Pattaya on the Siam.
Собака. И по набережной идет тройка, четвертая версия робота-собаки Boston Dynamics. Эта собака сейчас работает в автономном режиме. Ее поддерживает сервис Бангкокского университета, и весь суперкомпьютер, по-моему, 16-й в мире, 18-й в мире, работает на эту собаку. Эта собака замечает девочку. Она не выделила никого из толпы за час своего путешествия по набережной. Подошла к ней, сделала вай, приветствие, да, и затеяла с ней игру. Вы можете посмотреть этот ролик, поищите его. Игра продолжалась 30 минут, после чего стороны разошлись по своим делам. Они нашли такой стиль, который доселе не существовал. Девочка поняла, что от нее хочет собака, робот. Собака поняла, что от нее хочет девочка. Они выстроили удивительную коммуникативную ситуацию. Они произвели сейчас не просто что-то, да, а они произвели абсолютно новый дизайн поколения будущего, который до сих пор не существовал. Это детский дизайн будущего. Чем занимались взрослые? Взрослые занимались самым тупым делом.
That was the childish design, and what were the grown-up people were doing, and they did what the grown-ups do. They did what adults do. They started recording it. They were taking videos of it. So they did something that we always are unhappy about. So and just so the grown-ups were recording the videos of their children. So and just imagine what if children were recording the same videos. What if children were recording how the older generation is getting older and getting and decaying and so on. So what would the reaction be? So and well, some time ago, a generation Alpha was suggested, or the idea of Alpha generation was suggested. It's a new generation which was born in 2010, and the people of this generation will be born until 2025. That's a definitely different generation, and they have absolutely different technical specifications, unlike those children who were born before. So where do we have to look for some new facilities or for some new faculties of this new generation? So probably to the iPhone of iPhone 13, iPhone 14, or where do we have to look right now? So we have, that is the non-aging, non-transferring substrate of the future, which is multi-recurrent and which is which is always renewing. And the humanity has never treated this issue seriously. When we understood that children, when did we understand that children are a resource that could be developed and that could build the future? In the 17th or 18th century, the children are young, and the adults only started understanding understanding the potential that is stored in the children and the potential that we are losing when we are growing. Yeah, and that is the only resource which is the hope for the future. I have almost finished. I will skip the skip the slides, 2 slides, but that is the quotation from Heidegger. So it is rather hard, rather dense, and a little bit scary. But think about it. Innovative type is the same destructive as creating. So I transferred it into the axioms of the future. So you will see it in the presentation. I will share my presentation and a couple of books that you also can read. A wonderful novel of 2020, Alfred Dublin, and Ivan Yefremov, also the book of 1965, a wonderful detailization of post-communist society. So it was also to be implemented after the 20th Communist Party Congress, but unfortunately it never happened. Then John Fourier, so all the new trends which represent the development or the scenario for the future, but it starts with the question which we have to think about, and it's the question, why do we pay so little special attention to our future. And then another book, Futurology, a very good analysis of the future trends. So, and then Rosi Brandetti, a very good tale of the human history, that the human history is over and now it's the history of post-human, and we have to read and understand it. Then Klaus Schwab, Stakeholder Capitalism, very wonderful book. So it's about our next step that must be plural, universal, and cooperative. So only cooperative movement can become the facilitator of our future development. And then another book, Developing Future. So I think it's also a very good book, and you will know why we should destroy the system of hired labor and how the new economic entity can arise. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Я немножко задержался по времени.
I took a bit more time. I apologize for that. If you have any questions, please ask.
Я прошу прощения. Каков главный страх?
What is the main fear of?
Вы, собственно, прекрасно знаете.
Intelligible generation. You perfectly know what is transcendental.
Вы знаете, что.
You know what is transcending. So this is the process which is aimed at achieving transcendental. Now imagine that there is no transcendental and you have only transcending. You have a process which is always strive for a certain limit, but you never achieve this limit. Moreover, at some moment you start to understand that you don't have this, but you have only strive, which is aimed to nothing. This is the main point. Thank you for your lecture. I have a question. It is connected with my thesis work. You have a lot about how, but I like to ask what for. We can see that it's very strange. Why I care what will happen in 100 years. So, there are questions why we don't have post-communism image or something like that. So, where should we look for these ideas of why? Why do we need that? Why do we need to think about the future? That's a great question. I will disappoint you. There is no answer to this question. At some point in the period between the 1960s and 90s of the 20th century, the humankind in its embodiment of West European version stopped answering this question at all. And they made quite an unusual thing. Comfort of life and increasing is life expectancy was the answer, but that was a false answer. That's not an answer at all. And moreover, it's not a question. Why? It is within teleological discourse. You remember what teleology is. This is the definition of the goal within the analytical, then realistic, neo-realistic, pragmatic, any form of rational philosophy. Such a form of question is not acceptable. When we are talking about the teleology of development, then we getting into the system of theological discourse. And this is one of the problems which are formed within futurology. The end is always open. No one can say why. Yeah, and actually there was a film when the main character asks God, answer, why are we here? And God turns around and walks away and smiles. So this is this question within the community of politicians, some officials, became prohibited at some point. That's not correct. There should be an answer to this question. We should look for this answer. I can't answer it, so it's up to you to look for this answer. You said that turning to the potential of childhood, that was 17th, 18th century. So what do you think about the intuition of Heraclitus, the kingdom of the world belongs to a child? And how would you describe the process of production of a new type of future? Is it can there be the sixth type? So I can answer your questions and I can give a lecture on this. Let us first think about the fifth type. We have the network communicative situation of new level. No past generation produced such a type of network and such a type of communicative space. Heidegger, in his letter to Jespersen, said, we see something which is beyond communication and non-communication. What we saw with the robot dog and the girl is beyond the communication, but it doesn't reach the unknown uncommunication. So there is a core, and we should look for the point, for the viewpoint on what is going on now and how it is being built at the moment. We can't identify all the characteristics of that kind of production of future, because we are participating in production of metaphysical machines for its work. The system cannot be comprehended from within. We should get beyond the system. As for the childhood, Philippe Ariès, an amazing French historian and culturologist in the 60s, wrote a wonderful book about the history of childhood. And he mentioned that childhood as a cultural anthropological type began to be reflected on in the European and American civilization quite late, only by the beginning of the 17th century. And by 1990, childhood had turned into a wonderful source of global income. These were toys, infrastructure for childhood, the system of preparing for delivering babies, which had not existed before. And the entire 20th century was carried out in preparing for this wonderful state, childhood. There's a book, Design of Childhood, and this story is described there very well. That's quite clear that we can find toys not only in Old Greece, but in Neolithic period, and it was before that, and about a child who plays with dice, the most old game. So we should never forget about that. So the fact here is that nowadays, let's recall Greta Thunberg, the state when childhood decided to oppose the older generation.
Этика ответственности за самого себя, продвинутая в будущее, говорит.
So the ethics of responsibility for yourself, which is projected into the future, tells us that the future generations are entitled to require from their parents responsibility for their genetical program, genetical well-being, and for the world which their parents leave them. So it's something like that.
Здравствуйте, спасибо большое за очень интересную презентацию.
Thank you for your most interesting presentation, but I've got a question after you answered the previous question. And my question is,
Рассказ.
Henry Kuttner has got a story
Игрушки как
about childhood. When you spoke about the toys as the objects which help us to construct the future, probably the toys are meant for the children to be able to learn how to construct the future. And so the story is about, children and toys, and children through toys were developing the new type of thinking. So, and I recall Castells as the person who said that our new age is connected to the internet emergence and to all these technologies emergence. So what is the role of the internet for developing the idea of future, and how does the internet affect this fifth generation? Thank you. So that's a very good and very important question. In 1991, the professor of New York City University, NYU, tried to calculate how, over the recent 60 years, the space compressed, or just we have shrunk the space where children could walk without their parents' control. So now it has shrunk from dozens of miles in the countryside up to dozens of neighborhoods where children could go, or where children were led to go. And now it is just one backyard, or even the room. And what is to replace this space? Yes, that is the internet, that is display, and that is this World Wide Web, which made up for such a loss. So this loss of space was made up by some digital space. And who is responsible for that? Is it about children's responsibility? Could you say that children are responsible? No. So the children got some new media, children got some new channel where they could immerse, where they could dive, and whose responsibility is that? It's not the children's responsibility. So children always do that. They always make up for some loss. What is the internet? The internet is something that has never existed before, and that is the means of delivering the reasons. And it's immediate. It responds to what we call logistics. Heidegger, in his text when he was writing about what thinking is about, he defined the future. He doesn't like the future. He rejects it. The philosophy of the future. He doesn't like it, he rejects it, and it makes him think. It makes him sick. But it's the cult. It's the cult of logistics, which becomes the background of the future world to exist. And its best implementation, this logistic construct, in this digital way, just like in the internet, it will completely change the world. That is logistic construct that started defining the essence, that started defining our being. And so we spoke about radio. How to convert the radio set into a television set. So it's enough when you give it the shape of the television set. And now we are thinking about another logistic being. And So this World Wide Web, which was launched in 1990s, now dominates us, and we are even speaking about this new age, and we overlook the consequences that we might have. So this story with the children and with their free space to roam. Yeah, so is one of the stories, one of the episodes. But I'm sorry, we do not have enough any time left. Sorry, Alexander Alexandrovich. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your questions. And our next speaker is the PhD in philosophy, Alexander Sikatsky, who is the associate professor of St. Petersburg State University.
I'm sorry, we cannot hear the speaker because he's not talking in the mic.
Спасибо. Как раз и мое выступление, сообщение будет перекликаться вот с вашим интересным и содержательным.
So, my presentation will be kind of follow-up after your presentation. I would like to talk about the future of bibliosphere and the reading skills and about their future. Probably that's not an important question at the first glance, and it's very close to some metaphysical problems, but still it is quite important. And I believe that considering the future of bibliosphere, we can understand a lot in ourselves and in our future and the production of the future. What is bibliosphere? That's quite a simple thing. It means that people read books and people find some reason for that. They spend time for that and they do not regret this time, although this time spending is quite strange, may seem quite strange. And the words of one of the Karamazov brothers said that he didn't like reading books, but the question was how that happens, and he said that there is only lie in the books. So it was said that reading books and reading some fiction, this is moving to some imaginative worlds and getting away from reality. And why do we need some feelings of some imaginary characters? But still, that is still an enigma. As far as we are human beings, we are doing that. We do that. So this is simple, everyday transcendenting. So we penetrate these worlds and we understand that among the things which we are surviving so in our world, talks and reading books is one of the best things. It cannot be substituted with anything. Of course, we can realize our biological instincts, will to power. We can travel. We can think of some ideas, but even this is oriented at reading and talking. And Anna Arendt says, whatever the height of your power, but if you can't say about this to anyone, then you're a miserable creature. So, thus, we understand that bibliosphere is underestimated world of our self-estimation, the world without which we cannot measure our the level of our being. And at the same time, we say that bibliosphere is not only undergoing some hardships, but is in the period of some decay, probably, or it falls into oblivion. So, I would like to say the bibliosphere, which consists of paper books, or I would say, or just books. So it is really disappearing. So it remains only in retro modus or retro regime, and that reading a paper book is something vintage. And probably it's not obvious today, but it will be obvious tomorrow. So we are observing the dying out of this phenomenon. But at this very moment, we can identify some essentials of
являлось и
what bibliosphere used to be and still is.
мы можем действительно
So we can, with some ground, can distinguish between, can see fundamental differences between what a paper book offers and another type of producing a text nowadays, which we can see in electronic fields. So this reality of
свое время.
our life,
Эта дифференциация принципов
which we are living now. So this differentiation is principally important, and we will do that right now, because it's always possible to say that a text is a text. And is it so important? What is the means of delivering this text? But still, there are some important things. First of all, we should abstain from that metaphysical
его демонизации техники и предполагалось, что все это некоторые такие
So this metaphysical crumbling is a kind of useless manifestations of dementia, so say,
вслед за
and following Gus Manson, we can reproduce his crumbling about the electric bubbles which appeared there. He said that it would lead to the end of the world poetry, of comprehensive texts, because everything which is possible to be written in the light of candle, it was worth something, but a lifeless electrical light will erase it from our life. But so, and this prophecy did not come true as hundreds and thousands of others. So, and even using an electric bulb, very good books and marvelous books were written. So that makes us again get back to this issue of this distinction between paper book and book on a screen. So phenomenology is not worked out here, but we can say some things straight away. So a classical book, which has pages, cover, which occupies some space,
чтение или вхождение в нее характеризуется
which we take in the book. So penetrating into this book is characterized by some moments which are worth to be looked at. First, this is the full degree of involvement. So we dive into a book, so it captures us, it takes us, it enchants us. So the focus of our attention is a kind of shining point. So the book is monocentric to some degree, and our attention is focused on it. We are lost in the book. We have come in the book, and the world depicted in the book
наш собственный.
is understood or taken as our own one. Sometimes the situation of an engaged reader
От глаз, и ты сможешь вступить с ним в контакт.
So sometimes a person gets so much involved into that it's very difficult for him to get distracted from the book. So, but absolutely different is the reading from the screen. The figure of computer user is to some degree opposed to an ordinary reader, and there are some differences which should be mentioned, and they should be analyzed. For example, if we're speaking about a user which is in his amazing, glittering world where there is no monomaniacality and there is no need to get the person distracted from the book. So in the last 20 years, or probably even less, there has appeared multi-channel attention, which a phenomenon which was not thinkable of or not available even 50 years ago. So now we believe that a person should do something simultaneously, and we thought that our conscious is. So some philosophers use this idea, and they said that conscious is here and it is all the conscious, and it is focused on something, and all the rest is put aside or distant. So an appearance of this new figure of an advanced user
Пастуха или овна электронных пастбищ
or shepherd of electronic fields resulted in the fact that the format of penetrating into a new type of textual phenomenon presupposes a new type of dispersion which holds our conscience or our mind, and the person who is immersed in his device, a smartphone, can read something, some posts, some news, and he or she follows the information which is reading. At the same time, he can he can eat something. So reading does not prevent a person from eating or doing some other things at the same time. So a person can talk with another person. So we can always do some things simultaneously. And this all is combined with this unique, amazing format of presence, which would be very surprising for not only Aristotle, but for Heidegger as well.
So this dispersion of maniac attitude that cognition is cognition, so it has proceeded from the simple text, simple reading, to something that is mnogofunctional. So we keep track of some just events around us while we are reading, and sometimes we even go before or go in front of those events. Because we are not very patient, and we want to have it here and now, and sometimes we lose what our book or our reading asks us to concentrate on. So we are not distracted by some pop-up ads, and we are not distracted by the advertising that appears in our windows when we read something. But so just it's absolutely fine to us. So. Now we live in the time of Wi-Fi, so which is another lumen for us, like in the epoch of Descartes, like in the age of Descartes. Yeah, so that is our element of transportable identification, which competes with ego cogito and pushes it into the backyard of our cognition. Now the events which are happening now currently So the events which will be intensified in the future is that the eternity of the text leaves the bibliofield, bibliospace. And the world of book now is
Закатывается, и тут, наверное,
it is going down to, or it is falling into some sunset. And only when the being falls into oblivion, it can be evaluated as the phenomenon as a whole. When we develop some distance,
сущее Гештеллера, но бытие
when we develop some distance, we can look at the being and we can catch it as the wholeness. Then Derrida summarized this Heidegger's principle, and he said that the second constitutes the first. Only when there is something second, there must be the first.
будет первым.
Because if there is no second, we do not understand why first is first. And when there is some when there is some oblivion, we understand there was something being. And at the edge of disappearance,
Отплывание, благодаря чему мы
at the edge of disappearance, we acquire this facility to transcend. And that is what happened to bibliofield, bibliosphere. So it is going to become vintage. It is going into oblivion. And only now we can evaluate its significance and its significant components, its existential components,
в действительности
because the book has always been and is now a unique way to
уникальным порталом для вхождения в
to
любую
represent something and to be somewhere, to enter some portals, to understand the multidimensional thought and invented worlds where we are interested in the feelings of the characters. And as long as we are people, we are humans, we will be deeply into the feelings of the characters. So when we open the book, we
события
enter a unique event,
простое, но при этом
very simple, but at the same time, absolutely human event, which gives us the chance to be transported in time, to be transported between locations. But at the same time, we keep the homeopathic sensibility or sensitivity to what the book is devoted to. And we can lead the life from one book to another, from one compact universe to another compact universe. At the same time, we understand the delusion of this screen, which focuses on the essence of book.
нового критерия,
And it's a new criteria.
критерия
If the criteria used to be, just the facility to be enchanted and the facility to live some different lives. But now the electronic fields have some different criteria. For example, the fear of freezing or the fear of glitching. And when your screen freezes, there is no response from some new informational trails or informational trains. And
мономаниакального внимания
this monomaniac attention is decreasing. You see that if you read something for a very long time, probably. So that's the high time you checked the incoming mail, or you check the incoming messages, texts, because you have been doing some particular activity for a very long time. So when one philosopher was asked how the scientific congresses had changed over his lifetime, he said, I noticed only one change. Before, the lecturer could have been talking for about 20 minutes, and everybody was patiently listening to him. Now the limit has decreased to 5 minutes. And if you haven't said anything that draws the attention to your speech, so you can be thrown out, because nobody is going to tolerate you if you haven't said something valuable. And now I think that this limit has decreased even further. And so that is our, well, just that's the new reality for the bibliosphere, bibliofield, when the bibliofield cannot sustain any emptiness. And so we are moving at some different speeds. And from the point of view of the classical reader, all the electronic device users, we can see ourselves as jugglers who juggle 7 dishes and not a single dish drops down. But you then look at some other juggler who can juggle 9 dishes and not a single one drops. You become envious because you do not have the same facilities, you do not have the same capabilities of juggling several things at the same time. And that can be applied to our reading practices today. And when we see somebody who is more capable of doing something different, we become envious. And it means that we are changing speeds, and we must focus on some other things, and we no matter how hard we try to find something significant in geographic or cosmological discoveries, in wars, in expansions, in reality, we cannot surprise the humanity with some atrocities or with some violence. What can we develop? What new can we develop in this world which has seen all kinds of violence or self-sacrifice? But at the same time, as Nietzsche said, everything great, everything really new enters the world quietly on the pigeon's legs. And so that's the rebirth of bibliosphere, but at the same time, that's its decay. And so that is something that changes the human sensitivity, and something that is changing the bibliofield itself. So there is no book. But what do we have now? There is a thought, there is ego cogito, but we can be doubtful about this. But at the same time, there is the dictatorship of symbolism. And that is the principle to establish some counter naturality. So this dictatorship of symbolism has lots of matrices. So they are archetypes, and that's the complexity of transpersonal matrices, and that gives us a hint how to live this life and how each generation gets to this transportational conveyor, and where each generation lives through some particular experiences.
специфическим образом
The collective body of war is assembled by means of special dances, which go back to the dances near the fire. So the body of war is created. It's been for thousands of years, and even the old Greeks were despised the ways of preparing for the war with the Scaves or some other peoples. So when we speak about sorrow, for example, it is so there is a matrix for expressing sorrow, all different additional moments which help us to participate in one matrix and then to move into another matrix, and every individual represents some.
патроны не будут отстреляны, проживание не состоится. Так,
So the world was structured like this before ego cogito, before this revolution which led us to the possibility not to participate in the work of mega machine or transpersonal matrices. There also was the memory of space among these matrices,
сказителем, акын,
which made it possible for different speakers in different periods without a mistake within for hours reproduce texts, Mahabharata, for example, or Iliad, or a history of Gilgamesh. It doesn't matter. How could they do that? We can't understand that nowadays. Contemporary mnemotechnique does not that. So how people could remember such long passages of texts and reproduce it. However, those days it was done that in a way that the space itself formed or reformed it, and a speaker who sees people sitting in front of him, who sees the sun getting down and his fingers are on some musical instrument,
некий мнемотехнический прием,
which is also some kind of technical
он знает, что
technique. So when it all works together, he knows that the strings, the people sitting there, the sky, the stars will help him, will prompt him what to say and how to sing his story. So this memory of space is not that much surprising.
еще ниже вспомнить память металлов,
If we think about the memory of metals or of water, which makes it possible, which enables modern archaeologists to see or to understand where this or that stream, for example, in Greenland, comes from. So it's not that much surprising, but these are technologies which disappeared forever. And this ability to use the memory of space as well as some other transpersonal matrices was a kind of pre-subject formation which was subjected to bibliosphere. We are surprised. It's surprising how these people, how the speakers or singers could reproduce a text with a long text. But there are some points in the space itself.
не организуя пространство,
Let's now imagine that without organizing the space or just taking a row of some text from somewhere,
самый сказитель
the speaker or singer starts to reproduce the text completely. So that was considered to be a miracle those times because the
положение
space was not organized for that. He took some marks, he took some roles and reproduced it. So that would have been taken as a miracle, because one thing is change in the surrounding world, and the other thing is it's that this strange format, so to say, portable format of writing, which made it possible to move from the memory of space and to put this story, this thought, this theogonia or cosmogonia inside. It didn't disappear still, because the first attempts of written texts and writings were formatted into what we call a book now, into something which has acquired, probably in parallel, acquired its effect in Hebrew civilization and Old Greek civilization, when appearance of a book resulted in the fact that you don't have to look for those great cells of the space and to rearrange them. We remember not only with our neural networks and their constellations, but we also have another kind of memory. We remember with other dimensions, and if there are no these dimensions, we have no memory. We can remember with the space. We can remember some things with our books, with the design of our workplace. A lot is written in other things. So that's why Wi-Fi and electronic field reproduce this new type of contact or contact of living in the world. But when we have a book, it accumulates the moments which should be purposefully reproduced. So, being in a book, within a book, all the recordings, all the texts, they have influence of a book. So a book is not a kind of memory or the center of present, but it's another part of a bow which locks ego cogito. When I get into a book, I reproduce the main parameters of the world where I have to look. I try to understand this world. I try to understand if this world is interesting for me or not, if I should remain in this world or not. And it's very important, and it's this event passed unnoticed. And we can see as everything was prepared in the history of the humankind, at least in the Mediterranean area, so that this unique portal would start working. On the one hand, the necessity to decorate and reformat large space disappears. Yes, we lose some things, we lose intensity, we lose from the transition from Dionys to Apollo modus, but we acquire an amazing schemes and of new alternative materia. The book makes us be distance from some materia and transfers us into the world where another kind of materia becomes our reality for renewable interaction with ourselves.
продолжала существовать. И поэтому, собственно говоря, Библию
So that is why this bibliofield or bibliospace is created as the
носители
new package of all the complexity of sensitive, of everything sensitive. So it is core driver of everything that belongs to our sense, that belongs to our body. So empirically and historically, we understand that this decrease goes this way. So the aliens, the Greeks, the aliens, so they did not first have this habit of reading in silence, reading to themselves. The first public tradition was reading aloud and reading for the public. And all these theatrical performances gave the chance to stay remoted. So it was not, it took quite a long time to become able to listen to music without singing together, to watching the dance without dancing, without joining the dance. But so it took some time to transport, to transgress to the new epos, to new epics, to this dynamic ornamentation, which gave the idea of its own ornamentation. So, and this new culture was this new epic culture. But the main component or main element of it is still the book, because book contains parameters which are partly uncovered in the compositions of new time, like internal time, let's say internal time, when the major performance is the cinema, we have to adjust to this, to the time which has been prescribed by the director. Because if we lag in time, so we will develop some misunderstanding or we will get bored. The same when we listen to music online and watch some other performances online. But the book gives us our own gearbox, and we can shift our speed. So we can make something faster and we can make something, slower. We can get back and we can take a break so that after some time we can, return to the same point. Like tomorrow we can return to the same place, the same point, using our own speed and using the whole complexity, the whole gamut, the whole set of speeds and gears which were introduced by the book. And paradoxically, the book launches the embryogenesis of reading. So that's a new event. And first it was Goethe who first noticed it, and he says that there is a huge difference between the reader of the first day and the reader of the second day, between the reading of the second day and reading of the third day. And it would be really good to have something similar in life, to have something like theater. When you will watch the Divine Comedy, you can stop and you can discuss what you have seen. And that is what we actually do when we read. So that's a kind of embryogenesis of reading. And when we are all the readers of the first day, but when we finish the book, we seem to know more, but at the same time we know less, because we go through some emotions, and we want to analyze some emotions. And when we read the phenomenology of spirit, so we also think what will happen to the main characters. So we are bothered with all these thoughts, and we experience this wonderful process of development, the embryogenesis. And so that is something that doesn't happen in general when we receive and perceive in electronic fields, when the file is sent immediately in its perfect form. So this skill, this ability, or just this entity, the reader of the first day and the reader of the second day, is the wonderful entity of bibliofield, which gives us the chance to live several lives and to live, or just to give the human perfect abilities of vitality. So this embryo reading is the facility which we underestimate, and it justifies all the changes that have been carried out, and changes that we are witnessing with the book. So we have rejected some particular elements of reading, like intensity and ecstasies, for the sake of self-control and for the sake of spy control. And but we still pertain the sensors, our readers' sensors, and we are still able to make this way from a person who is just born up to the person who has read the book. And that is the history, and that's how it starts. And that's how the twilight is described, and that's our decision. And that influences our decision whether we are going to step into this embryogenesis, if we are ready to communicate with the reader of the second day. And so that's our memory, which must evolve towards oblivion. And here, I think we underestimate, and the modern biology has just approached this difficult topic of embryogenesis. Of course, the reading of genetic coupling or genetic coping is when the DNA molecule reads this set of genes, and this DNA molecule is a reader. So because we have got two different types of RNA, and when the reader reads this particular set of genes, comes with some certain solution. When we read the result, our result is the meaning, the notion, and nothing much has changed. Of course, if we read the manual to vacuum cleaner, we can result in some functioning vacuum cleaner. But if we read a book, so then it's our journey across some imagined world and our capacity to live through some different lives. But when our DNA molecule reads the structure, the set, so it results in a body or in an organism, and our bodies are the result of successful or not very successful or reading that was done at some initial stages, at some original stages. And what is the result? And why is the result not just a body, but a body which goes through all the stages of phylogenetic development? Why should a fetus reproduce the whole story of human life, of human being? Yeah, so why does it have to reproduce its short history and the short history of recapitulation? It's not explicable. Probably it's easier to send a file, like a short file, which is not very clear, and then the one which can develop into some higher forms, because all the existing creatures, they go through the same history, and the implementation of bibliosphere gives us the same embryogenesis, and that is the most important. And that is something that has been rejected by electronic fields. So it hasn't been fully implemented yet, but the meaning, the essence of this simultaneous projecting, whatever you project, like site or the newspaper page. So it's the idea is to stop embryogenesis, and every time to send a file and give us very simple instrument how to reproduce the future.
And thus leading us to the fact that all these retardations, which are unavoidable retardations connected with reading, so that they were put aside somewhere, so that they didn't distract from this beauty of presence. For example, if we are talking about some search devices where we can use sometimes just trying to find some facts, but without paying attention to some internal links. And 30, 40 years ago, the humanitarian erudition is now that much estimated. So the idea of sending a file presents in an idea which has not been implemented yet. We haven't felt all the consequences of the fact that text is away from the book. Before that, all the texts, all kind of texts, they were connected with the book as a great universe, but something has changed, and the first undocking happened, and at the end of the 17th century, something changed, and then instead of consecutive narration, there appeared something new. So, in one page, in a newspaper, there must be something political, something, criminal news, some kind of horoscopes, or something like that. So, and it all should be at the same page so that people could fix and grasp it. Actually, a modern monitor or any site reproduces the same front page paper where we can, without special knowledge, get some information and to have this kind of interaction with the world. So, and those currents which exist in bibliosphere, they are blocked, they disappear, and they are taken as some kind of parasite. So, and they become kind of fears which must be deleted from the modern world. So, the way of a book which started one day, they were substituted with the culture of opuses. The book
альтернативной материи искусства и изложения мысли. И вот теперь, наконец, мы пришли к тому...
And now we have come to the watershed, and probably with no return, when all these facilities of bibliophile are not fall out of the demand, and this embryogenesis of reading has not been reproduced, and the files are sent directly, and we are transporting this continuum. But indeed, we cannot underestimate this residue homeopathy of sensorium, no matter what symbolic world we live in, and no matter what develops in front of us. There are some particular reference points where there is no neurophysiological sense of reaction to a wonderful landscape. So that is the view from the mountaintop, and that is the lake, the wonderful lake, and we feel something. And there is a double use organics. How it works, we don't know yet. We don't know yet how it works, but it's the homeopathy of sensitive. And these are the reference points where the old matrix keeps its representations. They are kept everywhere, even in metaphysics, and sometimes, which we experience sometimes when we get acquainted to something new, and everything. So these elements are kept in bibliophile, unlike the world of electronic fields where we are now. And having said that, our underestimation of these reference points brings us to unimaginable consequences. You know the experiments which were conducted by Thorndike when the reduction of reception, when we start reading in silence, so it leaves some micro sensors, like, for example, the little tongue movements. When we read in silence, our tongue vibrates, and some some testers even put some clip onto the tongue, onto the tip of your tongue, and so then it becomes rather difficult to read. Because it's the sensor, because it's the perceptive sensor, and then when the tip of the tongue is clipped, so it becomes rather difficult, and that's the experiment which tells us that there is still something symbolic. There was the similar example which was carried out with deaf people when the clip was placed on their fingertips, and that produced the same result. It was very difficult for them to read, which means that there are some sensors between our metaphysical and physical. And it is a surprising fact, or we are surprised to understand that bibliophile and a book as some closed universe is equipped with microprocessors. And this entrance to these electronic fields results in some clipping and reduces some efficiency of this bibliophile. And the book broadcasts or sends the signals on different speeds and in different areas, in different worlds, and creates its unique world where you can live several lives simultaneously. And out of that wonderful world, you go to the electronic world with its linear structure. Of course, we receive this multi-channel attention. But at the same time, the price of receiving it is very high, and the value of it is really very doubtful. And finally, what I have to note when
And finally, when we are talking about the decline of bibliosphere, if we keep in mind that books are disappearing from our home libraries one aspect should be mentioned. It's about the fact that book is a real instrument of objectivation. If Marx and Hannah Arendt were right, and I believe they were right, that human realization presupposes some inner metamorphosis, in a sense that we can't translate our being in our death and in our will to the immortality only through living of our deadly body, mortal body, and activation of the background friendship or passion. Sooner or later, we will have to make a deed. It's something like a caterpillar cannot become a butterfly at once. That's why a person cannot get into immortality in the memory of the ancestors if a person hasn't produced something. So in here I'm talking about an opus, something which has been done by you or some deed. The musicians rehearse so well, and
как бы нам ни было хорошо друг с другом, в шизме овеществления мы все равно должны сделать вещи.
Musicians have to do some great deed. They have to present their concert or their work to the world. A poet should also enjoy the poetic atmosphere, but he still has to represent some poem, otherwise he will not be realized. So this is the need to make some inner metamorphosis and to go through some stages is based on the idea of opus. And this idea is similar to the book. Until there is a book, until it is a unique item of some presence, nothing will happen to us. But if a book disappears and some other type of translation comes instead of it, then we have consequences which we are experiencing nowadays and cannot assess them completely. And often it happens as Hannah Arendt said, that the results of human deeds disappear. So she says in her book that it's very important for us, something long-lasting, something which will not disappear during during consumption. We need something which we will need tomorrow and which will last long, which will carry something good. And that's what opus or work is different from just the consumer goods. And the point here is that not every consumer good has a form of opus. We feel kind of pity to a person who designs some piece of furniture which is very unique, which is very beautiful, and
искусства.
Well, it's different from a person who makes some work of art.
Долгосрочным этапом внутреннего ароморфоза и метаморфоза является
The most important stage of our inner metamorphosis is the opportunity to get to express ourselves in the opus which we do, which is actually a book. And now, when Bibliosphere is in the stage of its decline, we have come across a strange we encounter a strange paradoxes. Even though we have electronic books, we still need books, and the author needs a book. Many authors publish their books in electronic form. Some authors are bloggers, and quite popular bloggers, and even bloggers want to have their own book written by them because they intuitively understand that this is a mark in the electronic sphere that they have achieved something. The problem here is that blogsphere, unlike Bibliosphere.
То есть книжные страницы могут пожелтеть, бумага горит, электронные
Electronic, digital symbols will not suffer as it can happen with a book. A book can be lost, can be burned, etc. But
Борхеса, то есть условный архив блогосферы,
the archive of Blogsphere
практически вообще.
results in the fact that the input is not preserved. The rate of decay of final product is increasing, and no matter how popular blogger you are today like that. But what will happen tomorrow? There will be a decay, and the day after tomorrow, no one will recall you or will remember you. This is a tragedy which happens every day. We may think that Bibliosphere is about 3,000 years, but there are very few forgotten writers. But if you speak about blogging sphere, there are a lot of bloggers which no one knows, even though it has existed only for 30 years. So, probably in this respect, blogging sphere is a kind of deceit, because no matter what kind of blogs you are doing now, you will be forgotten tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. So until a book is preserved as an eidos, until then we can provide long-lasting effects of human actions, of human deeds, and we will not be deluded by this electronic sphere.
И, соответственно, вот в этом происходящем сейчас событии великого развития сферы и восхождения электронных пастбищ мы действительно можем усмотреть в том числе и факт.
Now, in this decay of bibliofield, we can see some hope for some historical significance and historical significant event. So that is why all the current processes like Culture Council and so on, so they are connected to this, because we do not have the embryogenesis of reading. And now we can do without all this expansions today, or with all these novelties today, because the humanity now is that one with the clipped tip of the tongue, who can live his life without any troubles. And that is what I guess what is happening to Bibliofield, and that is the most significant current and the most significant process of the future. Thank you.
Огромное спасибо.
Thank you very much, Alexander. So I think that this topic is really very important. Even to me, the person who is rather far from philosophy, but is very much about the university development, to me it is really very important because we now in the university are moving to the digital field. And for me, as the university official, it is really very important. Thank you for the most interesting presentation. My question is about the phenomenon of audiobooks. How would you classify them? As something which exists in these electronic pestilence, electronic fields, or something that gives a new channel to the books to exist? Audiobooks and electronic books on some special devices can be classified according to the existence of their paper book, like hard copy. If there is a hard copy which we can get back to and which we can use as the evidence of the real thing, so then it means that it exists in this reading in this bibliopestilence. Yeah. So, but if the primary channel is this multimodal electronic channel, and it can be represented in several channels, but the sacred experience is lost, then I guess we can classify audiobooks and electronic books. So we can say that they exist outside of this bibliofield. So we can accept them from the outside. So, and we can accept them as something that has left the space of eternity. So the text is not any longer chained to the book. So when the book is forgotten, the text changes its primary intention. And that is why, so the text can be defined as audiobook or electronic book. So it depends on which world it exists in, which universum it exists in.
So I'd like to ask you if it is possible to assert the process of production of a book is undergoing some digitalization, because many authors, as a rule, do not bring their manuscripts to the publishers. So they submit it with some in digital form, and a book which is published can be digitalized and then be used as a PDF file. So what I mean to say, a book being a paper book is still penetrating the blogging world, the electronic world. Is it the stage of a process of disappearing of a paper book, or it is still possible for a paper book to survive? Thank you for your question. That's quite difficult question, and it's quite difficult to make phenomenological border. What is a book? To the question, who am I? We can answer, I am what I am and my circumstances. So a book is an object which can be touched. On the other hand, it is an object which has certain circle of readers.
Сохранность того, вот, о чем пел Высоцкий в своей песенке. Значит, нужные книжки ты в детстве читал. Когда-то это было главное определение интеллигенции. Читал ты нужные книжки, значит. А не читал, ну что ж, ну, может быть, ты профессионально готовился к будущей карьере. И поэтому найти какой-то один единственный...
So to find a single element is quite complicated. It is possible a combination of your moods or tunings, so to say.
Макетов. Уже и нет уже ее трудно восстановить. Скоро ее будет восстановить невозможно, как память пространства. Происходят действительно и другие вещи. Как бы сами иногда книжные книги оказываются, ну, что ли, макетами того, что уже...
So when we accept some new technologies like electronic technologies, of course we lose the old traditions, but at the same time there are people who still read the paper books, but we can analyze the other modes. So when the photography appeared, nothing happened to the arts and nothing happened to the paintings. And when the cinematography appears, nothing happened to the theater. So, and probably it's just a stage, and just a stage which we have to live through. Probably we can choose some other strategies, like, well, making the libraries sacred, making them temples. So that could be a very good solution to give some added value to the books, because you have to get some necessary skills and necessary reputation to be accepted to the library. So that could be a very good step in preserving books. Or we can organize some special days, like, for example, Descartes Day, and somebody with a book of Descartes in hand so can read a couple of paragraphs from Descartes and can understand what they are about. So these particular movements and these particular trends can revive the world of books, and they can make, they can assure us that we still can keep the book and it will leave its trace, and so much depends on some particular modes and ways of authorization. And until this electronic field cannot offer anything in return or in exchange, so it will keep to be just a transit point for the book to become eternal. And so it will still be a kind of secondary channel for us to keep the book alive. But the bibliophile can be restructured, and it can be supported by some other instruments and channels. We are at the we are at the junction now, or we are almost lost in space, and we don't know how to keep the book alive, but probably we can build up some alternative scenarios. So, and something that could be the guideline for us in this, in this terrible world of losing our literature.
Здравствуйте. Во-первых, я хочу поблагодарить за доклад.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for your presentation. So I really liked it very much. In what you said, I saw a motive of losing the connection between the author of the connection between the author and the book. So, and it looks like now it feels like in a book there is less connection between this object and the book itself. So the digitalization which we are observing nowadays, it is some kind of maximum division between the book and the reader. I have a question. Can a person completely renounce one's body? It is impossible. And so I would rephrase it. Can we renounce a book? Can there be an explosion of awakening and the emancipation of
ну, бег.
Can we? Is it possible that in the future we will get to books again and then get?
Спасибо, я тоже об этом размышлял.
I thought about that. I believe it's a crisis of contact living, and you must understand that a book was a way of getting into distance from something material. On the one hand, we don't have to preserve all the fullness of presence of something material, because our life will not be enough for that. It cannot comprise that. The greatness of art is that we take
Чувственности, что принципиально важно.
some feeling and describe it. For example,
Мыслить не слова.
there was a forest
Место в пространстве, он
which occupied some place in space,
но в нем есть грибы.
but in this forest there are some mushrooms, and you can take them, and you can take these mushrooms and bring home from this forest. You can bring some
Можно принести.
joy from this forest. You can bring some poem from this forest. And an artist who does that says, this is the forest, and he is correct if he's responsible for the word order.
Но лес, воплощенный не в ветхой материи,
But this forest is not embodied in something material, but in some alternative material of art. This is the point when culture of state was substituted with culture of opus. We came to some state, to some culture where book is still in the center.
реально важны.
When I'm talking about these points of contact, what will happen if we null these points of contact, if we renounce homeopathic feeling?
Роковое замедление будет исключен, а он исключается. Вот тут вполне возможна ситуация того,
In this case, it's quite possible that we have passed among the most important thing and have not reproduced
санаториуму человеческой телесности. И тогда, собственно, вот эта как бы остывающая вселенная бесконтактного проживания, она ведь дает нам жалкие возможности, по правде говоря, по сравнению с тем, которое давало хотя бы мир опусов, да, где можно было осуществлять взаимные обмены благодаря этой альтернативной чувственности, где можно было предъявлять к проживанию строй мысли, где осуществлялся обмен эрос-аналогос и обратно. То есть все это удивительные достижения, которые нам не дают.
These are wonderful achievements that we cannot capture, and probably we, at some time, we will lose them, and probably we have already lost them. And what is the choice of generation? The choice of generation is the reality that must be confirmed. Thank you.
So I have a question. You've talked about our attention span being reduced across the time and about distractions that we have when we read online. In our society, we are many times pressed to multitask, but cognitive approaches say that we can only focus on one thing at a time. Do you think that this multitasking and these distractions, for example, when we read from a screen, are taking away our capacity to enjoy things in general, to enjoy hobbies, to enjoy reading?
Итак, вы говорили о том, что наша концентрация внимания снижается с течением времени, и о том, что мы отвлекаемся, когда читаем в интернете. В нашем обществе мы часто вынуждены работать в режиме многозадачности, но когнитивные подходы к вниманию говорят, что мы сможем сосредоточиться только на одной вещи за один раз. Считаете ли вы, что эта многозадачность и отвлекающие факторы, например, когда мы читаем с экрана, лишают нас возможности наслаждаться книгами и хобби?
Ну да, моя задача была все же
My main task was to demonstrate some comparison of every phenomenon. And this multi-channel attention, which certainly could have become striking for Aristotle. Of course, there are some benefits in that. That is the flexibility and easiness of, finding yourself, locating yourself in this multi-channel world. And of course, this kind of multifunctionality, multitasking is a wonderful achievement of the current time. And for those who lived 100 years ago, so they would also admire our capacities of juggling several things at the same time. And of course, it's an advantage. It is certain advantage. But everything is achieved with the loss of something. We have to pay for every new ability that we achieve. And our existential price for that, our existential price for multitasking is the deep crisis of contact cohabitation. Our co-motorium, our core driver, is not in demand any longer. And this experience goes, decays in time. I can witness the change of the conversation status. Like about 40 years ago, when we just have a friendly chat, so it was nothing special. So we had a chat, and it was kind of the everyday thing. But then you come to the typewriter, or you come to the manuscript, and you are obligated to produce something significant. But talks are just talks, so nothing special. But now we can see the complete change of it because of this total accessibility of keyboards. So it doesn't take you a great effort to send your message to the world, and we do it, but we do not feel any responsibility for that because we can type with whatever bodily part we can. But if it's just a chat, so now we have got great responsibility for the chat, because when you talk to a person, so he can listen to you, but at the same time he can do something different. And now the chat is something really very special, because if you can keep somebody's attention for half an hour with your talk, it means that you are, a skillful master of such conversation. And that is something, like juggling the plates in just in some Chinese circus. And that is something that we pay our price for. Thank you so much for your lecture. And my question is, can you say that this metamorphosis from the bibliology to the digital world, can we count it as the change of logos, change of human logos, and the loss of sacred quality of logos? Because as we know that the free world, because as we know it from the scripture, the world must be truthful, and the word, when it comes to the person, the word is the symbol of sacred features. And don't you think that this metamorphosis from book to digital means a stage of losing sacred features of human logos, which will result finally in the fact that logos will become the luxury to every person, something that Bibihin called, I am what I am in my world, and nothing but my language, it cannot exist anywhere. Don't you think that the language is the final resort for a wandering man? I would agree with you. And this way of losing sacred features is the way that we are surviving now. But this lobotomy, which was performed some time ago, is the fact which signifies that we are losing our logos. And we we are losing the sacred feature of argumentation. You remember what Socrates said? He said that the pure courage, the pure bravery, is the bravery in words. Yeah, like my mates saw me in the fight, and it was bravery. But it was not bravery of the pure kind. But the bravery is to speak, and the civilization accepted that. But it's again the step to losing some sacred qualities of the world. So of course, if we speak about our capacity to describe everything in words, so that's wonderful quality, but then there is some kind of secondary sacred feature, like the magic of the word order, the magic of poetry, poetry that is possible in the spheres where nothing else is possible, but the order can be different, and we know that there is some poetic sacredness. And we know that there are some ritual forms which must be kept. The classical example of it, the classical religion, and there are some religious rituals which cannot be logically interpreted, but they have been kept through centuries. And since the Age of Enlightenment, we thought, or we have been thinking, that we would get rid of some particular rituals, but we do not do it. Why? So probably because they have some inner meaning, in a sense. And even if the sacredness itself is fading away, we still experience some phantom pains. So when it used to exist, and there are some lacunes which must be filled. And, well, you remember the picture of Greta Thunberg. Yeah, so I think that the example of green movement is the consequence of phantom pains, because we need something sacred. We need something that cannot be explained, but the mystery of it remains. And that's the new type of sacred movements which we can expect these days. I think that the perfect movie, Solitis. So then, so I think it's a great example of just our humanity, human behavior, that we cannot do without some sacred things. So of course we wouldn't have some, I don't know, some bards, some traveling bards, but we will have Greta Thunberg, who will play the same role and who will resonate the same way. And so there will be followers, and there will be people who overcome the challenges and obstacles and follow her. So, and it means that nothing changes in our perception, that we need something sacred. And yes, probably we can say that so far, at least on the level of phantom pains, we still keep this, this sacred feelings and the same sacredness. Can I add my own comment? It's not a question, because we are, we have very little time left. But the question of our international participant brought me to some other thoughts, and I will probably refer to the physics, and I will speak about the matters which
when I speak about saturated plutonium, so as far as I'm a physicist, so when we speak about energy, coal can burn almost all night long, but it can heat only 3 people around the fire. So when you speak about the period of decay of digital information is very quick, but the zone of coverage, so I mean the amount of people it influences, it is 1,000 times more than if you speak about a book. Is it fair, this kind of change? If our goal is to preserve a thing, but if the goal is to preserve influence, and probably that's not a fair exchange. So that's what I mean. That's what I meant to say. Thank you very much. So I have a question to you all. At 3:30, at 1:30, we have lunch, and then in an hour we'll have an excursion tour. And please don't be late for this. Roman Svetlov wants to say a short presentation for 30 minutes. Shall we leave now, or shall we have it now?
А вы нас выпустите в эфир, да? А то я вам позвонил, что у меня же поехало все. Все приписочки я ему дал, меня слышит, да? Окей, все, спасибо большое. Ой, так насыщенный сегодня день. Доклад у него очень эпатажный. Я его как-то слышал, когда была лекция в соседнем со мной кабинете.
So that's quite interesting presentation. I heard it once. That's somewhere on the edge of theology and science fiction. And I asked him to have very brief presentation. So the reports which we have heard today were quite interesting and not easy to understand.
Истории жизни в Студхаусе Александра Владимировича Шендерика-Житкова, а завтра в Валенрод.
So tomorrow in the Wallenrod Library we will have the presentation of Mr. Kazarev and then Tatiana Chernigovskaya in the cathedral.
Есть ли какие-то организационные вопросы, проблемы?
Are there any organization questions?
Ну, где наш Роман Викторович? Бежит. А вы его хоть нашли? Роман Викторович. Все сказали просим, поэтому бедные дети, и я тоже уже 3 часа без еды, поэтому полчаса, Роман Викторович. Строго. Роман Викторович, пожалуйста. Доктор философских наук, профессор, заместитель председателя нашего жюри, руководитель высшей школы нашего университета философии.
So that is the director of our higher school of philosophy and sociology, the doctor of philosophy, Roman Viktorovich Svetlov. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope that the jury will make all the right decisions without me.
Твердая фантастика и теология.
So the science fiction and theology. The topic is very curious, is very interesting, and it is really exciting for me that I even gave a course on that, and probably I will refer to some of the elements of it. What is solid science fiction? So I guess that for those people who read some science fiction texts and fantasy, well, that's okay. And they understand what it is, so probably they understand that it's about science fiction, which aims at some more or less realistic, description of the laws of life and the laws of universe. But at the same time, it is science fiction which tries to predict. And unlike different fantasy
известно,
unlike different kinds of fantasy, where you can find lots of broken laws, when the natural laws are broken for the sake of the plot.
сразу скажу,
But I will, as a person who used to read science fiction in Soviet times, who used to read solid science fiction, and then who also read lots of different fantasy books. When they were even not translated into Russian, I read a lot of Tolkien and some other fantasy books. So I was actually convinced that science fiction is dying. So, but no. So the science fiction is developing, and is developing very well, and is developing both in the West and in Russia. And that is why, if you let me, I will speak about one writer who is probably not a solid science fiction writer, but more or less can be qualified as that. So it is David Brin, who has been known since 1980s, and his works were translated in Zeros. So probably somebody read his 6-volume work, Uprising. And so the recent work is called Existence. So
это про твердую фантастику.
that is solid science fiction. And why theology? How does it come to theology? It's not because it's not because it's our topic where theology meets philosophy, but it comes out of one simple observation that
Говорить о том, что я
so it deserves attention. And before I start talking about the book itself, I will give one explanation. In the 20s or 30s of the previous century, a German thinker and researcher, Carl Schmitt, created a concept of political theology. And so if, to simplify it, the concept can be formulated in the following way. The modern age, and we are living in postmodern, the modern age is the age which uses the concepts and discourses which were worked out by the medieval scholastic Europe, the same discourse strategies of persuasion, but that is the body with no head, the body with no God, the body with no head. That's my my opinion. Please don't qualify it as some assessment. So the God figure is in brackets or is inverted commas, but everything that existed in the Middle Ages is there. So Carl Schmitt paved the way to just to various discussions and rose some suspicious looks from everywhere. So in this science fiction is
о том же самом.
Science fiction tells us about the same things, as the theology says, Christian theology. That is an interesting story because the God's figure is not meant as one of the characters, but just the stories raise the same problems, the same issues, and speak about the same problems. So to make it even clearer, I will refer to one of the first Soviet space operas. Sergei Snegov, in early 70s, wrote a series of books, like 3 books, which was called People as Gods. I remember myself as a schoolboy who was waiting for the third book, for the third volume to be published. My father gave me two books, the first and the second volume, and so I remember myself waiting for the third book when I was staying at home because of the flu pandemics, and I was staying at home and reading the book. And then the book was called People as Gods, and it was not just it was not just a simile, and it was not a comparison, but it was about the people who acted like gods, and I was totally engrossed in the book. And when we move to our current time, and when we think about science fiction, which tests different current problems, challenges, which start from different structures of universe. And one of the Australian science fiction writers were writing about this new structures of universe, and then philosophy of mind, the zombie argument, and so on. So something that people are dealing with. So, but why is my choice David Brin? It's a very special writer. Probably that's not just the best writer in terms of literary style and the logistics of his works, but those who have read that probably noticed that he has got lots of plot lines, and probably sometimes he seems to forget about some particular line which is developing in his book, and he tries to narrow them down up to some reasonable number, but he forgets about something, and so he tries to operate his plot somehow. So, but he is quite courageous in terms of manipulating his plot. So, and now let's talk about the first trilogy.
I'm going to speak about this trilogy, Arise. So the plot is that we are in some future when Earth and humankind is just one of many civilizations which inhabit a lot of galaxies and which can communicate with each other, and super speed is possible. And where can it happen? It can happen only on other levels of space, and these other levels of space have something similar to the Plato theory of idea. And there is a theory that ideas are memes, which live in their own life, which have their own level of reality. So, jumping up in there, we find ourselves in some place which we need there. But there's not a republic of different civilizations. Each civilization which was put forward by some previous civilization, and these civilizations also get to a higher level of civilization, so we will not go into detail in here. So any of the civilizations starts to promote some other civilizations. So, and my question, whom the Earth civilization promote? Dolphins, yes, and gorillas. It works with the dolphins, and the gorillas are at the very beginning. So what is the history of these civilizations? This is the history of promotion of some living being to the level of consciousness. So, and while this promotion is underway, and while the father, so to say, doesn't go into the level of transcendental existence, until then, those who are being promoted are their clients who fight for them, who work for them, etc. And this is a kind of cosmic evolution. But there is one interesting point in this cosmic evolution. We make those who don't have mind, we make them those who have minds. Who are dolphins? These are fruits of our labors. who become sensible as we are.
Он начинает
So, and what happens with the fruit of our labors? So they start to rebel, and some of they fall into sin and start fighting against the people.
загадка.
And the main
Смысл людей
question here: who has promoted people?
оказывается.
And it turns out that the human civilization turns out to be quite unique, and they don't have any parents. At least they haven't been found. Probably the author wanted to write something about that, but still we don't have anything. So, what can we see here? Or what can we see here?
Ну, простую вещь.
And people thought about that many centuries ago. We can see only one thing: a human being wants to be a creator.
Франкенштейн,
And as Frankenstein,
да,
which was created by Shelley,
странное существо.
Shelley created Frankenstein, a strange creature. The same happens with people. People create something. We take some living beings, in this case, these were dolphins, and then this leap of transcendental is impossible without human interference.
Мы с вами понимаем, что
We understand that a son has to race against his father, but this discovery was not made by Freud. That's the second chapter of the Exodus. This is the rebellion of the creature against the creator, and the same we can find in this book.
которые, несмотря
And the idea of exceptionality
равны перед Богом, хотя
even inspire that notion that we are equal before God, at least in our sin.
в ряде христианских направлений, правильно, конфессий. Идея исключительности
So the idea of exclusivity or exceptionality also accompanies people. This is quite elementary thing, but still it makes us look at how fantastic discourse is formed here. What we are doing here, we just throw the future away.
теологических архетипов,
This is the same set of theological archetypes which has been worked out which was worked out in the Middle Ages in our civilization. If this discourse of promotion mainly refers to the past of science fiction, when we thought that we will find some xenomorphs, some living creatures on other planets. So we've been doing that since 1980. So we've been looking for extraterrestrial life, conscious life. And here we have a question, or a question rises: if there is life beyond Earth, and if life appears somewhere, and if it has appeared somewhere there and we can't establish a contact or find some traces of that, doesn't that mean that something wrong with us? Probably civilization have achieved a certain level, stops its history or ceases its history with suicide.
апокалипсис, апокалиптическое.
It's a kind of apocalypse. And it was discussed by Breen in his novel Existence.
Исходя из предпосылки, что
And there is a prerequisite that we
там третьего
can't establish contact with external civilizations, and we haven't managed to do that. So, instead of openness of the universe, we start discussing closed universe. But nevertheless, one of the most important
текста является такой космический.
ideas in this text is that space
Отправляется
dissemination. So certain artifacts,
кристаллы
crystals,
из себя на самом деле.
which are kind of computer devices within which there is conscious or knowledge of a number of old races, old civilizations. They're limited, but within them there is a universe, like in a computer,
в котором пребывает оцифрованное сознание.
and where digitalized conscious of different civilizations are there. So they take these seeds. They don't need to. So they can sleep for billions of years, and they can decide solve some theological, technological issues while they are traveling to other planets. And when primitive creatures develop into something conscious, then they begin. They give the beginning of the civilization. So the idea of seeding is something like the plot from the second chapter of Exodus. Adam was created, but he couldn't think, he was senseless until the spirit was blown into him. It's almost the same, but in this case we have this seeding.
Ну и, соответственно, тут
Devices who fly to other star systems. And here we have the question of the tree of knowledge. Isn't it the fact that we apply to this probe? Isn't it our temptation? Which of these probes with seeds gives the right direction for our civilization, and which one is a temptation for us? So if you've read this novel, probably you remember that there were a lot of these probes. So again, we are before a choice which should be made, and it was like that in the Adam garden. So which choice to make? It's you can find that out if you read this novel. So we have some plot here which is very much similar to the discourse in the Bible, in Christianity. In some cases, we can see some theology of science fiction, or as I called it, solid science fiction. So I have 5 minutes more. So
не нашему с вами американскому фантасту Филиппу.
I'd like to mention Philip Dick, another American writer,
К экранизации.
or to the screen version of his film Blade Runner. And what are these texts about? About the creator and about the creature, which rises against its creator. And this text is also about love, which is possible between the creator and the creature. And moreover, that might be a miracle. The creator and the creation might have a child.
Что иное как.
So, and this child by Philip, this child with Philip Dick is nothing more like half God.
Но по сути своей это соединение двух абсолютов.
So this is a combination of two natures which cannot be combined. So the creator and the creature made something new. And in this salvation for the creator is for the creature is possible. So I can give a lot of examples on these topics, but as far as I have no time more left, so this argument about the presence of will in with Jesus Christ can be also reflected in Philip Dick's works. So there are some similarities between these theological problems and works of Philip Dick. I don't mean to say that Philip Dick dealt with history of church. I don't mean to say that David Brin wrote about Chalcedon gatherings or some theological issues. There are some meta discourses, meta narration, which were developed in the Middle Ages, which until now are operational in our civilization. If we call the modern civilization to be post-Christian, it is the same post-Christian as post-modernity. When all the discourses of post-modernity are governed by modernity, and again, all the discourses of Christianity are governed or guided by the discourses of Christianity. It doesn't mean, I don't mean to say that we all now become very religious or something like that. I'm trying to say that we have not grown up of the robes which were sewn for us long ago when Christianity born. We have never left those ideas and those images which were created then. And the most important question here is if it is possible at all to get beyond this limits. So you've been listening to two presenters so far. I will stop here. Or thank you very much.
Огромное спасибо и огромное искреннее благодарность.
My absolutely sincere gratitude for such a brief but very rich presentation. Probably there are questions. Thank you. First, I would like to thank you for the most interesting lecture. And why do you think in the contemporary world, at least in our current time, the ideas and speculations about some particular some ideas of the past go further in the future? So if we take some medieval novel, so then there were speculations, they focused on speculations of their current time or about the past. But how did it happen that people started thinking about the future? And so just how did this solid science fiction era arose? So how did it happen to be? So actually, the first science fiction that I read, it was dated by the second century AD. So that was the life and adventures of Lucian. So that was not about the future, but it was also about the current time, their current time. But I think that such focus on the future can be connected to the change in our modus of thinking, in our mentality, because well, actually, this new type of thinking came to us with modern time. Yeah, so now our mentality, well, no matter how much we fight with teleological features. So anyway, it is very much teleological or theological. We imagine a kind of society, the society which tests what does science fiction do. So it tests the issues, it tests the problems. So it could be utopia or dystopia, but they test the problems. So we check the prospects, we check the assumptions of what it's going to be like in the future. So it's kind of, well, advanced thinking. It's like, well, some interpretation of teleology. But so this teleology does not obligate scientists or, well, writers, fiction science writers, to do something special. So what David Brin said about the purposes of science fiction. So we test the predictions, we test the forecasts, and we test what it can be like in the future. So it's a kind of advanced thinking, and I think that, but the most important prerequisite for it to emerge is the shallowness or emptiness of our ideas of God. So if it used to be that God had some assumptions about humanity, now we have some assumptions about the God. And I think that makes us think in advance. Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. And I think that many speculations were given to me, and I also revisited the whole Olympiad agenda and the world now. And I also recalled the novel by Roger Zelazny, The Count of, or the Prince of Light. And the description of the world that existed there was also rather specific. And when you spoke about the creativity of God and the desire of a human to always be a creator, so how do you think this idea could be implemented beyond our borders? So we actually have never thought about such a possibility for the religion to go beyond our space. Do you think that religion would be functional? Do you think that religion will be changed somehow if it existed well outside this world in the space? And is there any temptation for the human to be the God in themselves? Well, let me fail to make any predictions, but let's recall the the Roman Club, so which said that so some particular religions help us build the system of values and build the predictions. But if we look back at some very popular science fiction works, I would probably think about some mild science fiction books, where we describe some future space settlements, and they are described through the metaphors of some medieval societies, or and they are described in the metaphors of some medieval shapes. So that's Robert Zelazny, that's some other authors of mild science fiction. So, but solid science fiction is about different stories. But how many laws, how many natural laws are broken? So then the books can be qualified as mild or solid science fiction. Good afternoon. Roman Viktorovich, thank you so much for this wonderful mini lecture. I learned a lot from you. Of course, the Russian language is not my native one, but I would try to ask my question in Russia. So you mentioned Soviet science fiction works, and you also said that we haven't crossed the borders. We haven't crossed the frames of post-Christian civilization. My country, Vietnam, it is a socialist republic, and I wanted to ask what is your current Russian view or opinion of this civilization? Does it make sense, or does it think about going beyond these frames? And what do the young people of your country have to think of? And if you are planning to go beyond these frames, what do we have to do? And if not, so what can we do instead? So that's a very serious question. So the first, Soviet science fiction is a good one, and I ask everyone, or I call everyone for reading it. And it's not only about Strugatsky's works, but some other writers are also very good. And because, well, all the books are rather complex entities, ideologically, psychologically, they're really very dense with all these matters. So then the thing that we haven't left the discourse or the system of medieval discourses is true, and I think that you can find it in many works, even in Snegov's trilogy. So you also can find it, or It is Difficult to Be God by Strugatsky's. Their work is also wonderful on that. So, but the question is not when we are going to live it, but how are we going, or can we leave these borders? Can we cross these borders? And can we go beyond the frames of these medieval discourses? Can we do it? And following Carl Schmitt, we have to think about the importance of these discourses, the semantics of these discourses, and why we are still under the pressure of these discourses. And I think it's the topic for some new research, and it's just a very wide topic. So, and how we can do it.
Ну, и мне кажется, возвращаясь
And getting back to the previous speaker, probably the next round of research could be focused on which links we are going to break, which links that connect our mentality to our history. So which links are going to break? So Roman Viktorovich, so we really regret your absence last year when we had the Day of Science, and we had an online marathon which was devoted on our future. And the slogan of the marathon was open to the future, and lots of different researchers were involved, like physicists, biologists, psychologists, even psychiatrists, and they came up with their view on what the future human is going to be like, and what kind of links will connect us to our past. But if you get interested, you can find some speeches online, and the topic of the marathon was open to the future. Thank you so much. So that's the lunchtime. So please try to be quick, and 2:30 our trip will start.